Welcome students to this chemical world. This is second video lecture on metals and nonmetals. In the previous lecture, we have discussed about the definition part of metal and nonmetal and their physical properties. Now we will move on to the chemical properties of them. So firstly, we are taking the chemical properties of metal. And before starting with the specialized reaction, we must recall few points. The first thing is the valence electron of metals are either 1, 2 or 3. And the lower the number of valence electron, the more reactive will be the metal. Secondly, they usually loses or donate electron to form cations. That means they are electropositive by nature. And third thing, they usually present in monoatomic form. That means their atomicity is 1. Now we will move on to the specialized reaction. The first is the reaction with oxygen. Metals on reaction with oxygen forms metal oxide. Few were formed basic metal oxides, few were formed acidic oxides, and few were formed amphoteric oxides. Amphoteric means they show both the behavior of bases and as well as of acid. For example, aluminium, when react with oxygen, it forms aluminium oxide. This aluminium oxide can react with both acid as well as bases to form aluminium chloride as well as sodium aluminate. Both are salt and they releases out water. That means the aluminium oxide is amphoteric by nature. Now sodium, when react with oxygen, it will form sodium oxide. This sodium oxide react with water to form an alkali. So sodium oxide is a basic oxide. So all the metals form oxide, but the nature of oxide is different. Now different metal react with oxygen, but their reactivity differs. For example, sodium, potassium are very reactive, very vigorous reactive metals. So they react at lower temperature also. Whereas aluminium, magnesium, zinc, they react on heating. And some of the metals like copper, iron, they react with prolonged heating and strong heating. But few of the metals like silver, gold, they do not react with oxygen even at a high temperature or even at a prolonged heating. So every metal, their reactivity differs with the reaction of oxygen. Now the second specialized reaction is reaction with water. Metals react with water to form metal oxide or hydroxide. Both can be formed, oxide and hydroxide, and hydrogen gas will evolve out. For example, sodium reacts with water to form an alkali, sodium hydroxide. Potassium will form potassium hydroxide. Aluminium, iron, they will form corresponding oxides. Here again, the reactivity of different metals with water also differ. For example, as we know, sodium and potassium are very vigorous reactive metals, so they react with even cold water. Magnesium will react with hot water, whereas aluminium, zinc, iron, they all react with steam. That means a very reaction with water at a very high temperature when water converted into the steam. Now again, metals like copper, silver, gold, they do not react with water even at a very high temperature of water in any condition. Now the third specialized reaction is reaction of metals with acid. With acid, all the metals will form metal salt and hydrogen gas will evolve out. First of all, we are taking the example of hydrochloric acid. When metals react with hydrochloric acid, they will form corresponding chloride salt. For example, aluminium will form aluminium chloride, sodium will form sodium chloride, zinc will form zinc chloride. But again, the lower reactive metals like copper, gold, silver, they do not react with hydrochloric acid. Similarly, reaction with sulfuric acid. Here also metal will form corresponding sulfate salt and hydrogen gas will evolve out. Zinc will form zinc sulfate, aluminium will form aluminium sulfate, sodium will form sodium sulfate, and so on. Hydrogen gas is not evolved when metals react with nitric acid, because nitric acid is a strong oxidizing agent, and as it oxidizes hydrogen, as it reacts with a metal to produce hydrogen, that hydrogen gas was oxidized with nitric acid to form water, and nitric acid itself get reduced in the different oxide of nitrogen. Again, understand this point. Nitric acid is a strong oxidizing agent. Oxidizing agent means it can oxidize water, hydrogen. So as metal react with nitric oxide, the hydrogen gas will evolve out, and that hydrogen gas was oxidized by the presence of nitric acid, because nitric acid is a strong oxidizing agent. It oxidizes hydrogen gas to water, and as it oxidizes hydrogen, it also get reduce itself in different oxides of nitrogen. It can be nitrogen dioxide, it can be dinitrogen oxide, it can be nitrogen monoxide. Any of the oxide of nitrogen will be formed. So when metals react with nitric acid, hydrogen gas doesn't evolve. Next is the reaction of metal with metal salt solution. With metal salt solution, metals usually show displacement reaction. That means the more reactive metal will displace the less reactive metal. In this condition, we can see that if magnesium is poured in a copper sulfate solution, after some time it will form magnesium sulfate and copper will release out. That means magnesium, which is more reactive, displaces the copper. Similarly, when iron is kept, iron nail, you can see in the picture also, iron nail if kept in a copper sulfate solution, because iron is more reactive than copper, it displaces the copper. So the next is, we are all the time we are saying that more reactive metal or less reactive metal. How we can decide that which metal will be more reactive and which will be the less reactive? This we can decide on the basis of reactivity series also. The arrangement of metals in the decreasing order of their reactivity is called reactivity series, which you can see in this slide, that potassium, sodium, calcium, these are most reactive metal. The middle order was aluminium, zinc, iron, lead, and the least reactive were the silver, gold, mercury. These are the least reactive. So why some were more reactive, some were less reactive? Because metals which loses electron faster will become more reactive and they acquire higher position in the reactivity series, and metals which loses electron slower, they are less reactive. Now the reaction of metal with chlorine. Metal forms metal chlorides with chlorine. All the metal will form metal chloride, but this compound is ionic by nature. Now reaction with hydrogen. Only highly reactive metals react with hydrogen, because hydrogen itself is a electropositive by nature. Whether it is non-metal, but it is electropositive by nature. So only the higher reactive metal will react with hydrogen to form metal hydride. So students, this is all about the reactions of metal with different elements. I hope you have understood. Now in the next video we will meet with the chemical properties of non-metals. Till then, stay at home and stay safe. Thank you.